Chef Mira Daniels hadn't exactly planned to become the personal chef for the galaxy's most terrifying apex predator. In fact, she'd been quite content with her position as head culinary diplomat for the United Terran Embassy aboard Nexus Station. The pay was decent, the hours were reasonable, and until last week, no one had threatened to disembowel her over a soufflé. "Diplomatic dinner in T-3 hours, people," Mira called out, slicing through a vegetable that resembled a blue cucumber but tasted like cinnamon. "Remember, the Arcturian delegation absolutely cannot, have their food touch. Separate plates for everything, or they'll declare war faster than you can say oops." Her sous chefs nodded frantically, scrambling to prepare 17 different species worth of diplomatic cuisine. Nexus Station wasn't just any space station, it was the hub of intergalactic politics, the neutral ground where species that wanted to tear each other apart could instead passive-aggressively insult each other over appetizers. Ambassador Jorvik poked his balding head into the kitchen, his tie already askew, despite the early hour. "Chef Daniels, a word." His voice had that particular strain that meant someone important was being difficult. Mira wiped her hands on her apron and followed him into the hallway. "The Draconians have agreed to attend tonight's summit," Jorvik whispered, glancing nervously over his shoulder, as if the mere mention might summon them. Mira felt her stomach drop. The Draconians, as in the scaled nightmares that conquered the Orion Belt in 3 days. Those Draconians, the very same. First time they've agreed to diplomatic talks in 50 years. Jorvik tugged at his collar. "Their advance team arrives in an hour to inspect security. The full delegation comes tomorrow, and you're telling the kitchen this now." Mira fought to keep her voice level. "Do you have any idea what Draconians eat? That's why I'm here." Their ambassador sent dietary requirements. He handed her a tablet. "Good luck." Mira scrolled through the document, and felt her professional confidence wither. Raw meat, still bleeding, high calcium content, must contain active endorphins. She looked up. "How am I supposed to serve food with active endorphins?" Jorvik shrugged in that particular way bureaucrats do when assigning impossible tasks. "You're the culinary diplomat." Diplomat, culinarily. As Jorvik scurried away, Mira leaned against the wall and continued reading. According to the limited information available, Draconians were 9-foot-tall reptilian predators with 4 arms, enhanced olfactory senses, and a temperament that made hungry velociraptors seem cuddly by comparison. Their society revolved around hunting, honor, and apparently, terrifying the living daylights out of human chefs. The document ended with a cheery note. "Failure to provide satisfactory nutrition may result in increased aggression and diplomatic incidents." "Fantastic," Mira muttered, heading back into the kitchen to break the news. "Not only do I need to make dinner for 17 species already, but now I also need to find something that's still wiggling for the galaxy's most feared carnivores." No pressure. Little did she know that in approximately 36 hours, she would be alone in her kitchen with 800 pounds of hungry, irritable Draconian. And somehow, that would be the beginning of the strangest friendship in the galaxy. The diplomatic dinner had gone, well, not catastrophically. Mira counted that as a win. She'd managed to cobble together something resembling Draconian cuisine by serving extremely rare Titan elk with a calcium-enriched blood sauce. The advanced security team, consisting of 2 Draconians who made the others look friendly, had eaten without complaint, which diplomatic protocol translated as barely acceptable. Now at 0200 hours station time, Mira was alone in her kitchen. The rest of her staff had fled the moment their shifts ended, eager to put as much distance between themselves and the impending Draconian arrival as possible. But Mira couldn't sleep. Tomorrow's full diplomatic reception would make or break her career, possibly literally, if the Draconians took offense. "Think, Mira," she muttered, pulling up xenobiology texts on her tablet. "What makes endorphins active? How do you serve something with death spasms without committing several ethical violations?" The kitchen doors whooshed open behind her. Mira spun around and promptly dropped her tablet with a clatter. Standing in the doorway was the largest, most terrifying creature she'd ever seen. 9 feet tall was an understatement. This Draconian nearly scraped the 10-foot ceiling. 4 muscular arms crossed over an armored chest. Scales the color of burnished copper caught the light as the being ducked to enter her kitchen. A ridge of spines ran from its head down its back, quivering slightly with each breath. Its face was somewhere between dinosaur and dragon, with amber eyes containing vertical pupils that fixed on her with predatory focus. "You are the food preparer," the Draconian stated, its voice a rumbling bass that Mira felt in her ribcage. Mira's brain helpfully supplied 3 responses: run, screaming, faint, wet yourself. She went with secret option 4, awkward professionalism. "Chef Mira Daniels, Head culinary diplomat, she said, extending her hand before realizing that might look like offering food to a predator. She quickly withdrew it. Can I help you? The main delegation isn't scheduled until tomorrow. The Draconian's nostrils flared. I am Krozak, first guardian to Ambassador Thex. I seek sustenance. Now that her initial terror was fading to mere extreme fear, Mira noticed something odd. The massive Draconian was fidgeting. One lower hand kept rubbing its stomach, and despite the intimidating posture, Krozak looked almost uncomfortable. Are you hungry? Mira asked, chef's instincts overriding self-preservation. The station provisions are inadequate, Krozak growled. What you served earlier was processed. He spat the word like a curse. Mira winced. I apologize. Our supply chain is limited, and your dietary requirements are. Your apologies mean nothing to my digestive system. Krozak took another step forward, claws clicking against the floor. We Draconians require proper nutrition to maintain diplomacy. Without it, we become irritable. Given that the baseline for Draconian temperament was terrifying, Mira didn't want to imagine irritable. She straightened her spine and went into problem-solving mode. I have access to the station's entire food stores. Tell me exactly what you need, and I'll prepare it. Krozak tilted his massive head, studying her with those unnerving amber eyes. You would do this? Now? Without authorization. I'm the head culinary diplomat. Feeding hungry diplomats is literally my job description. Mira managed a smile that felt only slightly terrified. Besides, I'd rather not have intergalactic relations collapse because someone was hangry. The Draconian's face was difficult to read, but Mira could have sworn something like amusement flickered across those alien features. We require prey, living. The hunt provides necessary hormones that preserve our health. One massive hand gestured to the sterile kitchen. Your preserved meats lack essence. Mira's mind raced. Living prey on a space station. Impossible. But then she remembered. The xenobiology lab has a containment level for test subjects, she said slowly. There are Jovian swamp rabbits being bred for adaptation studies. Swamp rabbits. Krozak repeated, the translator struggling with the concept. Six-legged herbivores about this big. Mira held her hands about 2 feet apart. Fast, but not sentient. Used for scientific research. Something changed in Krozak's posture. A loosening of tension. A subtle shift from threatening to merely imposing. This would be acceptable. 30 minutes and one very nervous call to a confused xenobiologist later. Mira found herself in the station's massive freezer, watching a 9-foot Draconian warrior delicately devour 3 Jovian swamp rabbits with surprising grace. Despite having claws and teeth that could shred metal, Krozak ate with the precision of a surgeon, wasting nothing. These contain adequate nutrition, Krozak announced, licking traces of blue blood from his claws. The ambassador's mood will improve with proper sustenance. So, your entire species gets cranky when you're hungry? Mira asked, fascinated despite herself. Krozak's eyes narrowed. Our metabolisms are accelerated. Without proper nutrition, our judgment becomes compromised. Like humans with low blood sugar, but with more diplomatic incidents and potential dismemberment. Your understanding is crude but adequate. Krozak stood to his full height. You have provided service to the Draconian Imperium. This will be remembered. As the massive alien turned to leave, Mira called out, wait, will you need more? For the others? Krozak paused at the door. The delegation numbers 12. They will require similar accommodation. Mira did quick mental math. That's a lot of swamp rabbits. The lab won't have enough. For the first time, Krozak's expression became readable. Concern. Perhaps. Mira said slowly, an idea forming. There's another solution. Something I could prepare that would meet your nutritional needs without depleting the station's research subjects. Those amber eyes studied her with new interest. You would attempt this? I'm a chef. Solving impossible dietary problems is my specialty. Mira shrugged, trying to appear more confident than she felt. Besides, preventing an interspecies incident, because someone missed lunch seems like a worthy cause. Krozak made a sound that might have been a laugh. A rumbling noise that reminded Mira of distant thunder. Very well, Chef Mira Daniels. I will return tomorrow before the others arrive. If your solution is inadequate, we will require many swamp rabbits. With that, the massive Draconian ducked through the doorway, and was gone, leaving Mira alone in her kitchen, with blue blood on her freezer floor, and the sudden realization that she'd just promised to solve a problem she had no idea how to tackle. Right, she muttered, pulling up her tablet again. How to simulate the thrill of the hunt in a casserole. No pressure. By morning, Mira had gone through 14 cups of coffee, 3 xenobiology databases, and approximately 6 existential crises. She'd finally landed on a potential solution, but it would require bending several station regulations and one minor intergalactic treaty. Just another day in culinary diplomacy, Chef Daniels. You look terrible, remarked her sous chef, Marcus, as the kitchen staff filed in for morning prep. Thanks for the performance review, Mira said, frantically hiding her notes on draconian digestive systems. Listen, I need you to handle breakfast for the Arcturians. I've got a special project. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Does this special project have something to do with the draconian-sized footprints by the freezer? No comment, Mira replied, then added, but if anyone asks, you didn't see anything, and I definitely didn't requisition 17 pounds of Centaurian pepper extract. For the next 3 hours, Mira worked in the kitchen's isolation prep area, a room designed for preparing foods that would poison one species but delight another. The station's computer kept flagging her ingredient combinations as potentially hazardous, likely toxic, or her personal favorite. Why are you doing this? By midday, she had prepared 12 individual meals contained in specialized warming units. Each contained synthetically grown muscle tissue soaking in a carefully calibrated hormone solution, dusted with calcium-rich minerals, and infused with a neurochemical cocktail designed to mimic the rush of a successful hunt. Was it technically allowed under station regulations? Absolutely not, but neither was having 12 hangry draconians tear apart the diplomatic hub of the galaxy. At precisely 1400 hours, as the rest of the kitchen staff prepared for the delegation's welcome reception, Mira's communicator buzzed with a message from an unregistered source. Rear service corridor. Now, telling Marcus she needed to check on a special delivery, Mira grabbed her culinary creation and made her way to the service corridor, a utilitarian hallway rarely used except by maintenance drones. Krozak was waiting, his massive form somehow managing to blend into the shadows despite being the size of a small shuttlecraft. You came alone, he observed, sounding vaguely impressed. I figured bringing an armed escort might send the wrong message about trust, Mira replied, pushing the hover cart of containers toward him. Besides, if you wanted to eat me, you'd have done it last night when I was conveniently in the freezer already. Those amber eyes narrowed in what Mira was beginning to recognize as amusement. Logical assessment. What have you prepared? I call it hunt in a box, Mira said, opening one of the containers. Synthetic muscle tissue grown from Rigelian mountain goat DNA, soaked in a neurochemical bath that should trigger the same endorphin response as an actual hunt. The calcium content exceeds your minimum requirements by about 30%. Krozak leaned forward, nostrils flaring, as he inhaled the aroma. His spine ridges rippled in a wave-like motion that Mira couldn't interpret. You created this. Overnight. Sleep is overrated. Mira shrugged. The diplomatic corps didn't hire me for my reasonable work-life boundaries. With surprising delicacy, Krozak lifted the container and examined the contents. Then, without warning, he took an enormous bite, tearing through the synthetic flesh. Mira held her breath as the draconian's eyes closed, processing the taste. For a terrifying moment, there was complete silence. Then Krozak's eyes snapped open, pupils dilated to almost perfect circles. This is, he struggled for words, his translator clicking as it sought the right expression. This is acceptable. From what Mira was beginning to understand of draconian communication, this was practically effusive praise. The delegation arrives in 1 hour, Krozak continued, gathering the containers. These will prevent incidents. Glad to hear it. I've included instructions for proper heating on each container. They should be consumed within 4 hours for optimal effect. Krozak tilted his massive head. You are not what I expected, Chef Mira Daniels. Because I'm still alive, because you understand necessity without judgment. One massive claw gestured to the containers. Others see us as monsters. You see us as beings with needs. The sincerity caught Mira off guard. Well, I've worked with Tellarite diplomats, who need to eat rocks soaked in methane. After that, a little synthetic bloodbath seems downright conventional. Krozak made that rumbling almost laugh again. The delegation will remain for 7 days. Will you continue to provide sustenance? And just like that, Mira became the secret personal chef to the galaxy's most feared predators. Over the next few days, a routine developed. During the day, Mira would oversee the official diplomatic meals, creating bland, politically inoffensive cuisine that wouldn't start any wars but wouldn't win any awards either. Then, late at night, she'd meet Krozak in increasingly out-of-the-way locations to deliver her special draconian meals. As the days passed, their exchanges became longer, evolving from mere handoffs to actual conversations. Mira learned that Draconians had 7 different words for the texture of raw meat but no concept of dessert. Krozak discovered that humans could eat completely inedible objects like bacon-wrapped jalapeno poppers on a dare. "You intentionally consume capsaicin?" he asked, horrified, after Mira explained spicy food, a compound evolved specifically to prevent consumption. "Some humans climb mountains because they're there," Mira replied, chopping ingredients for tomorrow's meal. They had taken to meeting in an abandoned maintenance kitchen in the station's lower levels. "Others eat ghost peppers for the same reason. Your species makes no evolutionary sense," Krozak declared, watching her work with fascination. Despite his fearsome appearance, he had proven to be an attentive audience, genuinely curious about human cooking techniques. "Says the 9-foot carnivore who gets hangry enough to derail peace negotiations," Mira teased, then immediately wondered if she'd gone too far. But Krozak's spine ridges rippled in that way she now recognized as laughter. "The ambassador's mood has improved significantly since your intervention. The talks progress well. Good to know. I'd hate to think I've been committing multiple regulation violations for nothing." Mira paused her chopping. "Speaking of which, Security Officer Trent cornered me today, asking why I've been requisitioning hormone supplements from medical." Krozak's posture stiffened. "You face consequences for assisting us." "Nothing I can't handle," Mira assured him, though she was less confident than she sounded. "Technically, I'm operating under the mandate of ensuring diplomatic relations through culinary accommodation. It's just a creative interpretation. If you require intervention..." No, Mira said quickly, imagining Krozak intervening with station security. "The last thing we need is a diplomatic incident. I'll handle it." Krozak studied her for a long moment, then reached out with one massive hand. From a pouch at his waist, he withdrew a small object and placed it on the counter between them. "What's this?" Mira asked, picking up what appeared to be a scale, deep copper with iridescent edges, about the size of her palm. "A guardian scale," Krozak said simply. "Among my people, it is given to those under one's protection." Mira ran her finger along the smooth surface, surprised by its warmth. "I'm not sure I understand." "You have provided for our needs at risk to yourself," Krozak explained, his voice unusually solemn. "This creates a bond of obligation. You are now under my protection, Chef Mira Daniels. Any threat to you is a threat to me." Mira stared at the scale, then at the massive draconian warrior who had somehow become, what? A friend. A very large, very scary friend, who apparently now considered himself her personal bodyguard. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "Words are unnecessary. Among draconians, actions determine bonds." Krozak gestured to the food she was preparing. "Your actions have spoken clearly." Before Mira could respond, her communicator buzzed urgently. It was Marcus. "Boss, where are you? Security's looking for you, and they don't seem happy. Something about unauthorized use of medical supplies." Mira felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "I'll be right there." She looked up at Krozak, who had already shifted into a posture of alert tension, sensing her distress. "I need to go," she said, pocketing the scale. "But this means a lot. Thank you." Krozak inclined his head in a formal bow. "Until tomorrow, Chef Mira Daniels. Remember, you are not alone in this station of political vipers." As Mira hurried back toward the main levels to face whatever security had in store for her, she couldn't help but reflect on the absurdity of her situation. 2 weeks ago, she'd been terrified at the mere mention of draconians. Now she had one calling her by name, and giving her what amounted to an alien friendship bracelet. The universe, Mira decided, had a strange sense of humor, almost as strange as her new 9-foot, 4-armed, overprotective friend. Unauthorized requisitioning of medical supplies. Accessing restricted areas after hours. Failure to log special dietary preparations. Security Officer Trent read from his tablet with the smug satisfaction of someone who'd finally caught the fish they'd been trying to hook for days. "Care to explain, Chef Daniels?" Mira sat across from him in the station's security office, maintaining what she hoped was an expression of professional concern rather than pants-wetting terror. "As you know, Officer Trent, the Draconian delegation has specialized dietary requirements." She gestured to her own tablet displaying the official meal plans. "I've been working to accommodate them." At 0200 hours, in a decommissioned kitchen on level C, Trent's eyebrow arched so high it threatened to leave his face entirely. And I suppose the hormone compounds from medical are just seasoning. Technically, yes. Mira attempted a winning smile. Draconian metabolism requires specific neurochemical triggers to properly digest. Save it. Trent cut her off, leaning forward. We have footage of you meeting with a member of the Draconian security detail. Alone. Multiple times. Outside of sanctioned diplomatic events. Well, shit. Officer Trent, I assure you this is all related to my duties as Chef Daniels. Let me be clear. Trent's voice dropped to a near whisper. The Draconians have conquered 12 systems in the last century. They've rejected all previous diplomatic overtures. Now suddenly they're at the table. And coincidentally, our head chef is having clandestine meetings with their security chief. The implication hung in the air between them. You think I'm, what? A spy? Mira couldn't help the incredulous laugh that escaped her. I'm helping them not get hangry enough to eat the Arturian ambassador. Then you won't mind if we examine these special meals you've been preparing. Before Mira could respond, the office door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Ambassador Jorvik stood there, looking even more disheveled than usual. Officer Trent, release Chef Daniels immediately. Jorvik's voice carried unusual authority. She's needed for an emergency diplomatic situation. Trent stood, clearly annoyed at the interruption. Ambassador, with all due respect, we're in the middle of a security investigation. And I'm in the middle of preventing an interspecies incident. Jorvik snapped. The Draconian delegation is threatening to withdraw from the conference. Their ambassador specifically requested Chef Daniels' presence. Mira's stomach dropped. Had Krozak said something about their arrangement? Had the meals somehow caused a problem? This isn't over, Trent muttered as Mira gathered her things. We'll continue this discussion later. In the corridor outside, Mira hurried to keep pace with Jorvik's surprisingly quick stride. Ambassador, what's happening? Did something go wrong with the meals? Jorvik shot her a puzzled look. Meals? No. It's much worse. The Galactic Council representatives arrived early and scheduled a preliminary vote on the Orion Belt mining rights. The Draconians are furious. They're claiming it's a deliberate attempt to undermine their position while they're away from their territory. That didn't sound right. The Draconians hadn't mentioned any concern about mining rights to her. In fact, Krozak had said just yesterday that the talks were progressing well. Where are we going? Mira asked as they entered a part of the station she rarely visited. Emergency session in Conference Room Delta, the Draconians requested, insisted, really, on your presence. God knows why. Maybe they want someone to blame who isn't a high-ranking official. Great. Just great. Conference Room Delta was the smallest of the diplomatic spaces, used for sensitive negotiations requiring privacy. When they arrived, the scene inside made Mira stop short at the doorway. The Draconian ambassador, Thex, was mid-roar at a collection of terrified-looking Galactic Council representatives, even larger than Krozak and with scales so dark they appeared almost black. Thex was the living embodiment of every nightmare about Draconians. Behind him stood 3 Draconian guards, including Krozak, all looking battle-ready with their spine ridges fully extended. On the other side of the table, a group of officials Mira recognized as representatives from the Galactic Council appeared to be trying to become one with their chairs. Between them sat a thin pale humanoid with silver hair and unnervingly blank eyes. Director Vel of the Mining Consortium. Deliberate provocation. Ambassador Thex was bellowing as Mira and Jorvik entered. The consortium delays our ships, restricts our access, and now attempts to vote while we are engaged in good faith negotiations. Krozak's eyes locked with Mira's as she entered. His posture shifted subtly, spine ridges lowering a fraction. Ambassador Thex, Jorvik began, his voice only trembling slightly. I present Chef Mira Daniels as requested. All eyes turned to Mira, who suddenly felt very small and very confused about why she was there. Ambassador Thex's massive head swung toward her, golden eyes narrowing. This is the human who prepares our sustenance. Yes, Ambassador, Mira replied, falling back on professional courtesy to hide her confusion. I hope the meals have been satisfactory. They have sustained us, Thex acknowledged, which from a Draconian was practically a 5-star review. You will verify what we have discovered. Before Mira could ask what exactly she was supposed to verify, Director Vel spoke, his voice oily smooth. This is highly irregular. A. Kitchen worker has no place in these discussions. His silver eyes flickered dismissively over Mira. We are discussing serious allegations about mining rights, not dinner menus. The human comes from your food preparation area. Thex rumbled. She will confirm if our suspicions are correct. Mira shot a desperate glance at Krozak, who gave an almost imperceptible nod toward Director Vel. Suspicions about what exactly? Jorvik asked. Ambassador Thex reached into a pouch similar to the one Krozak carried, and withdrew a small vial containing what looked like black powder. This substance was discovered in our quarters, near our food containers. Our analysis suggests it is xanthian nerve toxin. The room went deadly silent. Preposterous, Director Vel said, but Mira noticed a tightness around his eyes. The Draconians are inventing excuses to delay the vote. Mira's mind raced. Xanthian nerve toxin. It was lethal to most species. But she'd never worked with it. How would it have gotten near the food? Chef Daniels. Ambassador Thex addressed her directly. You prepare our meals. Did you include this substance? Absolutely not. Mira was genuinely horrified. I would never poison any delegation regardless of diplomatic tensions. Yet it was found near our food storage. Thex insisted. Something clicked in Mira's mind. A conversation she'd overheard just yesterday in the corridor outside the kitchens. Two voices she hadn't recognized. Speaking quietly. The compound is slow acting. They won't notice until they're back in their territory. And the effects. Progressive neural deterioration. By the time they realize the vote will be long settled, and they'll be too weak to retaliate. The mining consortium gets the rights, and we get our bonuses. At the time she'd assumed they were discussing some boring industrial chemical. But now, Mira cleared her throat. Ambassador, may I examine the container this came from? With a gesture from Thex, Krozak brought forward a food container, one of her special meal packages, but not one she recognized preparing. This isn't one of mine, she said immediately, inspecting the seal. See this mark? My containers have the kitchen's official stamp. This is a forgery. She pointed to a nearly invisible difference in the printing. Someone made a copy of my containers. Director Vel stood abruptly. This is absurd. I won't sit here while baseless accusations. Yesterday, Mira interrupted, a reckless courage filling her. I overheard two people discussing adding a compound to something that would cause progressive neural deteriorations after the Draconians returned to their territory. She turned to face Vel directly. They mentioned the mining consortium specifically. The room erupted into chaos. The Galactic Council representatives began shouting denials. Ambassador Thex roared for silence. Jorvik looked like he might faint. In the commotion, Mira noticed Director Vel's hand slide toward his pocket. A flash of metal, a small device she didn't recognize. His thumb moved toward a button. Without thinking, Mira lunged across the table, shouting, "He's got a weapon." Security rushed in, but not before Director Vel pressed the button. Instead of an explosion or weapon discharge, every screen in the room lit up with a message. Data transfer complete. Trent and his security team tackled Vel to the ground. But the damage was done. Whatever data he'd been trying to secure was now transmitted. As security dragged Vel away, Ambassador Jorvik turned to Mira, his face ashen. Chef Daniels, what have you done? Before she could answer, Krozak stepped forward, his massive form looming protectively near her. She has prevented a greater treachery. The human speaks truth about the poison. He gestured to the container. This was not among those she provided to us. But Mira could see in Jorvik's eyes, and the suspicious glares from the security team that the damage was done. She had just publicly accused a high-ranking official of attempted assassination, with only an overheard conversation as evidence. Chef Daniels, Trent said grimly, I believe we need to continue our discussion. Now, as security surrounded her, Mira felt the weight of Krozak's guardian scale in her pocket. She met his amber eyes across the room, seeing something there she never expected from a draconian concern. And behind that concern, something far more terrifying. The promise of intervention. You have no evidence linking Chef Daniels to any conspiracy, Ambassador Jorvik argued. But Trent's expression remained stone cold as he led Mira toward the security offices. Station regulations are clear about unauthorized meetings with diplomatic personnel, Trent replied. Especially with species classified as high risk. Mira felt a creeping dread. Her career was likely over, but worse, the real conspiracy remained uninvestigated while Vel's data transfer had already completed. In the detention area, the lights suddenly flickered and died, plunging them into emergency red lighting. Security breach on level 4, announced the station's AI. Unknown system intrusion detected. The door to the interrogation room burst inward with a horrific screech of metal. Krozak filled the doorway, his massive silhouette illuminated by the emergency lights, spine ridges fully extended. Release her now. Each word emerged as a guttural command that made everyone in the room instinctively step back. Stand down. Trent drew his weapon. This is a direct violation of diplomatic protocol. Protocol was violated when you detained my Kratak. Krozak snarled, the translator struggling with the draconian term. Ambassador Thex appeared behind him, flanked by the entire draconian delegation. Officer Trent, your station security is compromised. The mining consortium has agents throughout your command structure. That's absurd, Trent began, but was interrupted as his own communicator lit up with an urgent signal. Sir, came a panicked voice. We've found xanthian toxin production equipment in Director Vel's quarters along with communications to 3 security officers, including Lieutenant Moore. Trent's face drained of color. Moore is overseeing Vel's detention. He has likely already been released. The X rumbled. Your human chef discovered their plot, which is why she was targeted. Trent lowered his weapon slowly. Even if that's true, how did you access our security systems? Krozak reached into his pouch and withdrew a small device. The Guardian scale I gave Chef Mira Daniels contains a tracker. When she was detained, it activated our security protocols. You gave me a tracker? Mira asked incredulously. I gave you protection, Krozak corrected, as is right for one who has shown honor to my people. 4 hours later, Mira stood in the main diplomatic hall watching in amazement as Ambassador Thex and the Galactic Council signed the first truly cooperative treaty with the Draconian Imperium in 50 years. Security had apprehended Vel and his co-conspirators attempting to flee the station. The treaty includes a fascinating addition, Jorvik told her, looking slightly dazed by the turn of events. The Draconians have requested a permanent cultural exchange program focusing on culinary diplomacy. They want a cooking show, Mira asked, bewildered. Not exactly, they want you. Krozak approached, his posture now relaxed. Chef Mira Daniels, the Imperium formally requests your service as the first human cultural attaché to our homeworld. He paused, adding more quietly. Among my people, one who provides life-sustaining nourishment at personal risk becomes Kratak, blood-bonded. What humans might call family. You want me to be your chef's sister? Mira asked, trying to comprehend. I wish you to teach our people about humans through your cooking, while under my protection. Krozak's spine ridges rippled with what she now recognized as amusement. Besides, the ambassador has developed a concerning fondness for your hunt in a box. Mira laughed, the tension of the past days finally breaking. Well, I did want to specialize in cross-cultural cuisine. Though I never imagined it would involve becoming the adopted sister of a 9-foot apex predator. The best diplomatic relationships, Jorvik observed wryly, like the best recipes, often come from the most unexpected combinations. 3 months later, Mira stepped off the transport onto the Draconian homeworld, Krozak at her side. The spired capital city rose before her, beautiful and terrifying like its inhabitants. Welcome home, Kratak, Krozak said, as curious Draconians gathered to see the small human who had somehow earned a Guardian's protection. Mira adjusted her chef's coat, which now bore both the emblem of the Terran Diplomatic Corps and the copper scale of Draconian guardianship. So, she asked with a grin, what's for dinner? 6 months into her residency on Vextar, the Draconian homeworld, Mira had finally adjusted to the planet's punishing gravity and blood-red skies. Her culinary diplomacy program had evolved from a curious experiment into the most popular cultural initiative in the history of human-draconian relations. Today marked her most ambitious undertaking yet. The first interspecies culinary festival, hosted in the capital city's central arena. The same arena where, historically, Draconians had held ritual combat was now filled with cooking stations and bewildered aliens attempting to understand each other through food. The Arcturian delegation is threatening to leave again, Marcus reported. Rushing up to Mira's central station, her former sous chef had joined her team 3 months ago, unable to resist the career opportunity of a lifetime. Chef Grixdal used the same utensil for their mushrooms and their proteins. Remind him that Arcturians consider food mixing a form of assault, Mira replied, carefully plating what looked like raw meat but was actually her latest innovation, plant-based protein engineered to trigger the same endorphin response as the hunt. and get the Tellarite chef away from the flame stations before she sets her exoskeleton on fire again. From her elevated platform, Mira could see the entire festival, 30 cooking stations representing 22 species, all preparing dishes that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Delicate Centaurian pastries beside bubbling Jovian stew pots. Draconian huntmasters demonstrating traditional butchery techniques to fascinated if slightly queasy human chefs. Behind her, Krozak observed the proceedings with the vigilance that had become comfortingly familiar. Though technically her cultural liaison, everyone on Vextar understood his true role. He was Kratek bound to the small human chef, a relationship that afforded her a status few aliens had ever achieved. The High Council arrives, Krozak announced, spine ridges shifting to their formal position. Mira turned to see Ambassador Thex, now elevated to High Counselor, approaching with his entourage. Among them walked a familiar face that made Mira break into a grin. Ambassador Jorvik. She called out, hurrying to greet her former boss. You didn't tell me you were coming. Jorvik, looking considerably less disheveled than she remembered, offered a diplomatic bow to both her and Krozak. The United Terran Embassy's newest posting to Vextar couldn't miss the cultural event of the cycle. His eyes twinkled with unmistakable pride. Though I hear you've gone native on us, Chef Daniels. Mira touched the ceremonial copper scale now permanently affixed to her chef's coat. Not completely, just enough to avoid getting eaten. Chef Mira jokes, Krozak explained to the confused-looking human diplomats behind Jorvik. Draconians do not consume sentient allies. He paused, adding with his own version of humor, unless severely provoked. The diplomatic aides blanched visibly, making Mira laugh. You're terrible, she whispered to Krozak. You know how literally they take everything. The festival proceeded with remarkably few incidents. Only one small fire broke out quickly contained, and the Arcturians merely threatened war twice, a new record low. As the twin suns began to set, casting the arena in deep crimson light, High Counselor Thex called for attention. For generations, the Draconian Imperium stood apart from the galactic community. His voice boomed across the now hushed arena. We were feared, respected, but never understood. Mira felt a swell of emotion, as she watched aliens of all species, gathered around tables laden with each other's food, listening intently. Through the wisdom of one small human who dared to see hunger rather than threat, we have found a new path forward. The X's massive head inclined toward Mira. Today, we do not merely share sustenance, we share understanding. Later that evening, after the crowds had dispersed, and the cleanup crews had taken over, Mira sat with Krozak on the roof of the culinary academy she now directed. The capital city spread below them, ancient draconian spires now interspersed with new construction, embassies, cultural centers, and the occasional human restaurant. Did you ever imagine this when you snuck into my kitchen that night? Mira asked, passing him a container of her newest creation, a fusion dish that combined Terran spices with traditional draconian hunting fare. Krozak sampled it thoughtfully, his spine ridges rippling with appreciation. I imagined only my next meal, he admitted. Draconians are not known for our foresight when hungry. And now you're stuck with me as your sister, Mira teased. Pretty poor planning on your part. On the contrary, Krozak's enormous hand gently placed something beside her, a small metallic object. The Guardian Council has approved your petition. Mira picked up the ceremonial dagger, its hilt embedded with a scale identical to the one she wore. Among Draconians, only family members carried matched Guardian scales. It's official, she whispered, hardly believing it, after months of navigating Draconian bureaucracy. You are now formally registered as Kratek to the House of Zak. Krozak confirmed, his usually fierce features softening. The first human to be entered into the ancestral records. Mira felt tears welling up. I don't know the proper ritual response. There is an old saying among my people, blood makes kin, but hunger shared makes family. Krozak's forearms moved in a formal gesture she'd learned meant profound respect. You fed us when others feared us. You saw beings where others saw monsters. I just didn't want you to eat the Arcturian ambassador. Mira laughed through her tears. A wise precaution. He looked stringy. As Vextar's moons rose over the capital, a human chef and a draconian warrior sat sharing a meal. Proof that understanding could begin with something as simple as recognizing when someone was hungry, even if that someone had 4 arms, terrifying teeth, and a reputation for conquering star systems. In the diplomatic kitchen on Nexus Station, now managed by a nervous new chef, a plaque had been installed commemorating Chef Mira Daniels' service. It bore a simple inscription that had become something of a mantra among the culinary diplomatic corps. Before negotiating peace between worlds, first ensure everyone has eaten.